Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special Monday Snap Take. This weekend, the Snap Fan World Championships took place. To qualify for this tournament, you had to finish at the top of one of numerous other tournaments. So this is the highest skill tournament in the absolute history of the game. We're going to go over the top 8 decks, and I've got stories for you. And hey, I think there's a new best player in Marvel Snap. Stay tuned to find out more. Before we go any further, please hit that sub button, hit that like, hit that comment, watch as much of this video as you can, help us grow, help us have the YouTube algorithm, help reach more people. Only you can help us grow at this point by liking, subbing, commenting, and watching longer. Up to you if you do so. We bring you more great decks than anyone every single weekday. Our basic format, we've got our top 8 deck from Naka, top 8 deck from Wils. Then we're going to go into the questions of the day. Then we've got 2 more top 8 decks. We'll do a last chance review for Pixie. Then we've got 2 more top 4 decks. Then we're going to do a last 1 week in review for Hope Summers. We'll do the second and first place deck, and then we will look at our shop and shoutouts as we always do. All right, so the first deck is Naka Thanos. 5 of the top 8 were Thanos, which seems like a lot, and hey, it is a lot, but just about half the field brought Thanos to this tournament. So it makes sense that so much Thanos was featured in the top 8. There is some selection bias here, but hey, if all these top players are taking Thanos, that means Thanos is likely the best thing. This is our first Thanos deck. It's from a Japanese player named Naka. It is really simple. This is sort of the evolution of Thanos Lockjaw. It basically says, I'll run the exact same deck, but I'm going to put Hope in it. Right? It also throws an Alioth in there. Alioth was in a lot of these, I believe, all of these Thanos lists as well. Basically, as a way to say, if I got big, I no longer have room for Kara because I need Mobius for that Loki matchup. So since I no longer have room for Kara, and because I'm running Devil Dinosaur, I've got some risk for Shang-Chi. And since I've got risk for Shang-Chi, Alioth can stop that risk. Alioth can steal me those wins and those cubes. Let's keep going. So Scar for this version can change with Blob. For She-Hulk and Infinite, you lose a lot from that change, but Hope Summers means that you can sometimes go Hope on 3, whatever, Cull on 4, pass, and then She-Hulk Infinite, which is really powerful, but does require some draw doing. Scar and Blob are far easier to play together. Cull and Dino are necessary for, not She-Hulk, for Scar. Without those cards, Scar is a bad fit, and indeed, you're going to see throughout the tournament, Scar is often a cut in these lists now. Hope is now a Thanos requirement. Every single Thanos list runs Hope now. Sorry if you were hoping not to buy Hope, but oops, time to buy the card. Mobius is for the Loki match, otherwise it's a really tough match. With Lockjaw, you could just sort of cheat and beat Loki no matter what. Now you need a little bit of tech. Mobius does that. It also helps in numerous other matchups. Think things like Sarah. Kara or Psylocke can replace Mobius, but you're accepting the bad Loki matchup. Same concept for Jeff here. You can consider Nightcrawler. It is a really good card. It helps you not lose to bad locations, but it's not a requirement. And this is a Thanos deck, so you should probably have Thanos. So again, Naka is a Japanese player. Here's how you play this deck. Turn 1, draw. Turn 2, Jeff or draw. Generally speaking, I would choose draw, but your non-draw stones, if you have Hope in hand, will reasonably often get saved to be played on Hope, unless you already have Cull or something you want to do on turn 5. Turn 3 is Hope or a Time Stone. Turn 4 is Cull. If you can play that on Hope, that's great. Or a 5-drop if you played the Time Stone. That would be Devil Dino or Vision. Devil Dino is better if you're trying to cheat out Scar. If you're trying to cheat out Scar. Vision is otherwise generally better because it represents power that can go anywhere. Turn 5, Scar plus a 1-drop, which is 8 on Hope, or a 5 or 6. Blob, if you have a Alioth in hand, or an opponent that's not running Shang-Chi, is perfectly fine and often backbreaking on turn 5. And turn 6, Blob, Magneto, or Alioth. And then you win. Alright, this is the deck. It's really strong. This is like the baseline deck. There are various versions of this throughout the tournament. No one played this exact version, but Naka. You'll see the changes throughout. And you will not have to wait long because the very next deck is 2 cards apart. This one does not run Mobius, instead opting for Psylocke, and runs Wave over something. Help me. Iron Lad over Devil Dino. Nope, Devil Dino's on both. What the hell is missing? We go Jeff in both, right? Yep. Psylocke, Hope in both. Shang in both. Cull in both. No Alioth here. We've got no Alioth and no Magneto. There we go. So we're going Wave and Iron Lad over Alioth and Magneto. Good. Sorry about that. Neither one of these made it to the top 8, but both did make it to the top 8, suggesting that both work really well. Hope Summers is again a requirement for these lists. In this case, Hope with Wave means that if you can go Wave and another card onto Hope on turn 5, you can double 6 on the last turn of the game. Oh, this one doesn't run Blob. That's super interesting. But you can go double Hope on the last turn of the game. So we're covering cards that are different. Iron Lad can be Professor X, Mobius, Enchantress, or Kyara. And obviously, you can also run Blob. If you have Blob, Blob is really good. My working assumption would be that this player, who does not play as much Marvel Snap as they used to, did not have Blob. I don't know that for sure, but that's my working assumption, because why the hell would you not run Blob in the obvious Blob deck? This deck is just trying to put out power. So we're not going to cover every single turn. Since Iron Lad and Wave are the main differences, your general play for Iron Lad is you have nothing else on turn 4, right? If you have nothing to do on turn 4, Iron Lad can hit a Wave, it can hit a Hope, it can hit a Stones, it can hit Stones that help you draw. Iron Lad's a decent play here. If it hits Power Stone, you're a little sad, but I believe every other card here at least has some use. Scar Thanos. Power Stone, Scar Thanos are kind of useless. Everything else has at least some use if you play Iron Lad with intention. The other change here is Wave is the same as Hope on turn 3, where you're just trying to use Wave to wrap something out. In this case, generally speaking, Thanos or Devil Dino. Perfectly fine plays. Or you do that turn 5 Wave plan, where you can do Wave 2 cards on it, and then you can double up on the last turn of the game. Wils is the only American to make the top 8, and that's as far as this player went. All right, questions of the day. Personalized bundles, why didn't some get them? I actually reached out to Second Dinner and got confirmation that I could share. About 50% of players got personalized bundles at this point. It's planned to roll out to everyone, 100% of players, relatively soon, but we're starting with 50% of players. And in addition to that, they're going to be modified as time goes on. So hopefully they get to be really good value and things people actually want and target people and they will buy. The algorithm will hopefully guide us that way. Philip Ratkovich asks what Series 3 card I waited forever for, and I am one of the lucky ones who played from Global Launch. If you played from Global Launch, when you got to Series 3, there was this thing where in the token shop, you can buy a new Series 3 card of your choice. Well, it would rotate that Series 3 card every 8 hours, and you can buy it for 1,000 tokens. So I didn't really wait for any Series 3 cards. It made Series 3 completely painless, but extraordinarily fast. So I flew through Series 3, being the little whale that I am. I ended up with most Series 3 cards. The last good Series 3 card I got was Ms. Marvel, because Ms. Marvel, as a 5/6, was not in any major decks, and I was in no huge rush for her. Mojo the Clown asked for X-Men comics recommendations, and I'll do 3 different eras. I'm going to do 3.5 eras here. I'm going to start with, obviously, the Chris Claremont X-Men. They are stellar. It really holds up. If you like X-Men the Animated Series, most of the stories are based on Claremont X-Men. Please, please, please read some Claremont X-Men, and most people tell you to start the Phoenix Saga. I've never loved the Phoenix Saga. I want my X-Men sort of like dealing with more Earthbound stuff. But like my recommendation doesn't actually change that. My recommendation is actually the original Brood Saga, which ends up dealing with like racism in space stuff. And I think it's really, really strong and really, really fun. There's also, of course, things like God Loves, Man Kills, and so on and so forth if you want to check out the Claremont X-Men. The next X-Men I'd read are the new X-Men, the Grant Morrison new X-Men in particular. That's a series where Grant Morrison took the X-Men for like 5-6 years on just this giant crazy journey. It's very modernized. A lot of the movie stuff tried to be Grant Morrison X-Men, except it was nowhere near as wild because Grant Morrison is pure imagination. I love that run. It is right there with Claremont as my favorite run. My 0.5 is in the early in 2009, 2011, somewhere in that general area. Kieran Gillen had an X-Men run right after Matt Fraction had an X-Men run, and I really like that run. That is when the Cyclops was comics get really good. Kieran Gillen writes one hell of a Cyclops, and it's absolutely stellar. The other choice for X-Men is obviously the current Jonathan Hickman run. It starts with Powers of 10 and House of X. which are 2 mini series that you can just pick up and go. All of these come in collected bundles, and all of these are on Marvel Unlimited. The Krakoa era, which is what the House and Powers of X kicks off, just ended in comics right now. It is one of the best runs of X-Men ever, at least in my opinion. If you'd like your questions right out in tomorrow's video, leave them in the comments. Thanks. All right, our next top 8 deck is finally a non-Thanos deck. This is XQuality Dark's Hela. This is the only Hela deck that made top 8, and it's a Hela non-Black Knight. In fact, there's only one Series 5 card here. It's Corvus Glaive. This is a really simple list. It says I'm going to discard some cards and bring them back with Hela, and that's going to be more power than you can deal with. There's nothing fancy about that. A lot of the higher-ranking Thanos lists, though, have an answer for that. We'll talk about that as we go. So you need Corvus, otherwise this is Series 3, which means that Hela is one of the decks to target if you are early in Series 3, because you can get it just by getting the right Series 3 cards and buying Corvus Glaive once you get enough tokens, or he comes back around in Spotlight Ashes. So this is a Spanish player. We had the top 3 seeds were Spanish players. This is another Spanish player. So turn 1, Blade, when the opponent's not playing a when it is a big card, but not Death or Hela, which means you will Blade off Infinite, Giganto, or Magneto early. Turn 2 is Mobius, but I would play Blade over Mobius with the aforementioned targets. You play Sif if Death is in hand, or you have a bunch of 6s, but not Hela, same 6s as for Blade. You can also drop Corvus. I will usually drop Corvus with Hela in hand, although if I know I have Corvus and Hela in hand, I will almost never play anything on turn 1 and 2, just because I want more cards in hand to not hit Hela with my Corvus. Turn 4, Dracula is usually better than Jubilee on turn 4. Jubilee gets better later, but earlier on, I'd rather drop Dracula because I don't usually early want that Jubilee to hit Hela. Although if I don't, and then there's, of course, the worries of things like Blade, Lady Sif, and Corvus if I do play Jubilee. And those are better than a 3. Sometimes Corvus is better than Dracula or Jubilee, depending on what's in hand. If you just top deck Corvus and you still don't have anything important in hand, you can just drop Corvus and go to 10. Turn 5, a 6 if you played Corvus. If not, Jubilee is better than Dracula, because at this point I'm usually willing to chuck for Jubilee, and then you just work back through the turn order. Turn 6, again, Hela over Jubilee. Great to see Hela finishing this high from XQuality Dark. Not a player I'm familiar with outside of their placement in this tournament, but this is a really powerful and simple list. One I urge players who are trying, it's deceptively complex, but it's one I urge players who are early in their Series 3 journeys to start to target, because I think it's just really easy to achieve. You fundamentally need a few Series 4 cards, and then even a couple of the Series 3 cards are sort of replaceable. Like if you don't have Giganto, you can play Hulk there just fine. You can get Magneto from like any season pass, apparently. You need Hela, but you don't really need Black Cat. It helps, but not important. You do need Dracula, and that's kind of it, right? Like everything else is earlier series. So this is really, really achievable. Okay. Our King of Swiss is Duuruk with this deck. He goes by Monkey. I'm going to call him Monkey just because saying that name. I believe his name's actually Derek, but whatever. Monkey's deck is the simple old Zun's deck. This was the #1 deck in Marvel Snap in the December season, the Black Knight Sarah list. There is a 1-card difference here. That is Mobius was Enchantress, and now it's Mobius because losing to Loki sucks. So this was the Zun's list. If you don't want to play Enchantress because you think it's expensive, you can just drop Rogue, and Black Knight is irreplaceable. This is another one that's really, really low on high series cards, and again, really low on, Ms. Marvel. Sorry about that. Ms. Marvel would be Omega Red in this list, and you have a reasonable chance of choosing an Omega Red lane that you can just frickin' win with Ms. Marvel, because you've got a lot of really big stuff to put in there. Zabu is irreplaceable here as well. I don't know why I missed these cards, sorry. But Zabu is likewise completely irreplaceable. Do not play this without Zabu. But Zabu is a card you really, really want. Mobius is unneeded. Ms. Marvel can be Omega Red. And you need Black Knight. Still reasonably cheap deck. Alright, so this is the undefeated King of Swiss. This was the number 99 ranked player last month on the Post-Infinite leaderboard. Turn 1, Black Knight. Turn 2, Zabu is generally better than Jeff. I'd play Black Knight on turn 2 over Jeff usually. Turn 3 is Sif or Blade if you can, and those are better than Mobius basically always if they hit a Infinite or Magneto. Turn 4, Ms. Marvel is better than a Shard. You can Ghost Rider if the opponent doesn't have Shang-Chi. And you need to know your matchups, right? To know if your opponent has Shang-Chi or not. Turn 5, Sarah, and turn 6, you're just sort of trying to go off. If you have Sif, Sarah, and Zabu, you can play 3 of these. If not, any 2 of Ghost Rider, Shang, Shard, and Ms. Marvel. And those are generally better than Magneto. You're basically never skipping for Infinite here. This deck is really strong, really simple, really powerful. I'm very impressed that Monkey was able to pilot this to King of Swiss, as it waded through a sea of Thanos, only to lose to the most surprising deck in the top 8. We'll talk about that momentarily. But first, last chance review for Pixie. Pixie is out of Spotlight caches as of tomorrow, so we've got to talk about this card. It's a 2/1 Series 5, 6,000 tokens. On reveal, shuffle the cost of all cards in your deck. The starter there. Pixie is good. She's not amazing. She doesn't break the game. I'm very surprised. I expect her to be either completely terrible or completely, insanely busted, and she's just good. She goes in a lot of various Thor decks, a lot of sort of good stuffy lists where you're perfectly happy to shuffle up some costs, and you don't really care if you can't play some low cost stuff, if you get some high cost stuff. She's ultimately just fine. She's always paired with Mobius, because Mobius gets rid of her downside, but opposing Mobius absolutely ruins her life. It means that she only has downside for you if opponent has Mobius and you don't. For that reason, because I don't expect Mobius to go anywhere, I don't expect her to ever be truly great, but she is, however, very good. I suggest you skip her. If your resources are limited, she's an easy skip. Very fun card, but very unnecessary. Next up, we have Ragett's top 4 move. Yeah, you read that right. This is the top 4 move from our friend Ragett. I am very, very impressed that this deck got top 4. This is the deck that was the number 8 seed that kicked out the Monkey deck. It almost won in the top 4. It is absolutely stellar. How well Ragett plays this. You might notice 2, 3. Oh my god, what the hell are they doing here? Cards, not what are they doing here, because they fit the deck, but I would never expect these in the top cut. In Negasonic, Hercules, and 2099, and this was played like a master with Ragett. I went and looked up the win rate for this list, and it was 43% in Post Infinite, so apparently no one can play this but its creator. I still think that it's worth trying. So you're going to need Hercules. 2099 could be fine as Enchantress or Shang-Chi. There is no replacing Ghost Spider. And people always ask, a regular question I get is, what's the hardest deck to play? It's this style move. This kind of move is the hardest thing to play because you have to start managing space and locations from turn 3 to set up turn 6. And it's really, really difficult. All right, this is the only 4 and 2 that made the cut because the strength of schedule was through the roof. But Glenn Jones, the man who creates all the cards in Marvel Snap, told us ages ago that Spider-Man 2099 had a higher win rate than people thought. There was this one player who was sort of kicking butt with it. That was Ragett. It was a different build, but that was this player who proved that they are the true master of this deck. So turn 1 is usually passed unless you have a good move target on 2, along with Iron Fist or Torch with Ghost Spider. Turn 2, continue the move if you did start a move on turn 1, or you can play Dagger Right, Craven Mid, or play one of your setup move cards. Turn 3, Vulture and move. If you played an Iron Fist, Vulture is really good. Or move another move and another move benefit, i.e. you can play a Ghost Spider and a Dagger together this turn, a Ghost Spider and a Human Torch together. A nice thing that you could do is you can go turn 1 turn 1 Human Torch, turn 2 Craven, and then if you play on turn 3 Doctor Strange, they're both going to get pulled, pumping the Craven and Human Torch at the same time, which is pretty freaking nice. And then if you can bounce that lane, you can do that all over again really, really well, which is just silly strong. You can also just drop Negasonic if you've managed priority by playing a couple early moves and try and blow up something like Hope Summers. Turn 4 is move and a beast usually. Beast with that kind of Doctor Strange play I explained earlier. You're just trying to get move everything that you want to bounce into one lane, bounce it. You replay that stuff with Herc on turn 5, and if you can afford to play Hercules through whatever manner, Hercules is really, really good on turn 5. It sort of creates a New York where you have a great benefit from New York on the last turn of the game. Turn 6 is Heimdall, which is usually better than Doctor Strange shenanigans, but figuring out where to Heimdall is really hard, and your opponent's going to play around it. So consider some Doctor Strange shenanigans with Cloak, and 2099 plus a single move to snipe a key target. And that's how you win with this. It is so hard to play. Watching the VOD on Alphos, ALPHOS, VODs is 100% worth it, because this is like the masterclass of Marvel Snap, and Ragett is brilliant. Figuring out Negasonic was a monster all day. 2099 was rarely used, but great when it was, and Hercules was a forced multiplier. This might have made the finals if Hercules didn't decide to chuck a dagger and Human Torch into one lane at the end of the game. If it separated that dagger and that torch, we might be looking at a very, very different final. Next up, we have Dott.Geo. Dott.Geo is playing the same deck as the number one list. This is going to be the number one list. We're not going to talk about it right now. Instead, we're going to talk about Dott.Geo. Dott.Geo was the number 3 player last season, and basically always finishes around top 5. I believe he was number 2 the season before that. He was on the Johnson Cup winning team, and the player that they seem to dedicate to playing like the random techie deck to see, to sort of test opponents. We're going to cover this deck more soon, and we're going to cover Geo's loss, because I think Dott.Geo is the best player in this tournament. And I'm going to go further. I love Lambie. Lambie's my guy. Lambie's on the podcast soon. I think Geo's the best player in the world right now. I think Dott.Geo is the best Marvel Snap player on planet Earth right now, at least of the known players. Consistent top of tournaments, consistent top of ladder, won the Johnson Cup. Damn, could have won this. And I'm going to explain to you why he didn't. He sent me this screenshot and explained his thought process. This board, we're looking at MarioTelli, the person who beat him. We'll look at that deck in a moment. But MarioTelli beat Dott.Geo. This is the board. At the end of the game, what MarioTelli has played on turn 6, going to turn 6, is Blob and Space Stone mid. Good. Jeff has not moved. Jeff can move left or stay where he is. The hope of MarioTelli is, at this point, that Blob gets so big that it gets bigger than the opposing 17 Blob, right? And then can get bigger, get the +3, steal the lane. It needs to get up to 17. It needs to get up to like 19 to do so, though, because Soulstone is in play, right? So Space Stone's not even going to add any power. MarioTelli just sort of throws it there as an afterthought. Now, there's multiple things. If Geo has Alioth, he's going to play Alioth and just win the game, right? There is no Alioth in hand, even though it's in the deck. What Geo decides to do, is Shang is going to beat him, right? A Shang mid is just going to like roll him as of the board right now, and so you need to get something big that can survive there or figure out how to win right. But winning right's a huge difficulty because you have to move vision, and then you're down in the right 16 to 3, and it's like you're not winning. There's no 13 power card, right? Blob is already mid, and Magneto's only a 12. You also have to respect that Jeff can move left. This is all explained to me by Geo, right? We talked this through. This is what completely convinced me he's the best player in the game. So what do you do? How do you beat Shang-Chi? You accept the Shang-Chi loss, right? You accept that Shang-Chi can kill you. You accept that Blob can move and that you can lose mid if Blob goes off. And you play Magneto mid, which is what Geo did. What Magneto mid should do is move Loki and Cull Obsidian. If it moves Loki and Cull Obsidian, even that Shang-Chi, right? Because what would be there would be Jeff or no Jeff if Jeff moves. Blob or Shang-Chi, Loki and Cull Obsidian. Even if that gets so big as to win. Even if that gets so big as to win mid, right is then 1, because 3 is more than 1, right? There's just a time stone right, or a time stone and a space stone right, and that's game. So what happened? A random space stone ruined everything. A random space stone meant that Magneto mid was only going to pull one thing, not 2. What was that one thing? If it's Loki, MarioTelli still wins. But he loses another 50-50, and it's not Loki, it's Cull Obsidian, which leaves 6 power to the opposing 3, because Vision had to move left to respect that Jeff. 3, and then, of course, on top of it all, none of this matters if Blob stops at 17 or less power. Right? The opposing Blob grows too big on top of everything else. So 3 levels of luck for Dott.Geo to lose. I think he's the best player in Snap. He played this completely perfectly. Space Stone mid makes literally absolutely no sense. Unless you read a Magneto, and spoiler, Mario didn't read Magneto by his own admission. It was just a random Space Stone in the wrong spot because Soul Stone made it have 0 power. But that allowed the 50-50 on Loki Cull, which went the wrong way, and then Blob hit right. And all of these things combined to a loss. I think Dott.Geo is the best. I think it's time to start respecting Dott.Geo as, at the very least, as good as Lambie. But the play here was completely off the charts. There's a whole bunch of other side conversations that I can have Geo explain about other plays that were possible and how they led to ties and more complicated situations that were likely losses if the opponent played Chung. This was a brilliant play that unfortunately didn't work, largely because of a lucky time stone into a strangely placed Space Stone. If Space Stone just goes right, nothing mid can possibly win. Where Space Stone would have power. And again, MarioTelli's change was an accident. Ouch. Alright, finally, Hope Summers is must buy. She's a 3/4 Series 5 Season Pass. After you play a card here, plus 1 energy next turn, she's in like 5 of the top 8 top tournament decks. She's in most of the top ladder decks. She's an absolute must-buy. She is the best Season Pass card since Ms. Marvel. And look, we keep saying that. That's not true. She's better than Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel was great. She is a better card than Ms. Marvel. She's not as good as Elsa. She's not as good as Loki. But she is an absolute tier 1, go get it immediately Season Pass card. If you don't get it, you're going to spend the next 6 months whining about this card. Save yourself the trouble. Spend the $10 if you can at all. Also, I give away like 15 of these, so hopefully you just won one. If you're not sure if you won one, check Friday and Sunday's video. They both have giveaway winners announced in them. Alright, the number 2 deck is MarioTelli. This is basically the same thing as the number 1 deck, except it runs Loki. And Loki is an absolutely brilliant mirror breaker. Loki says sometimes you draw air and a bunch of stones and you're just like, ugh, this is clunky. And it says, I can get out of it. I don't think that this could have even competed if it didn't have Loki. The other big turn of the Dott.Geo game is a Subterranea game where Geo snapped and stole 4 cubes. Largely because Loki turned a bunch of rocks into a bunch of really good cards in the opponent's hands. So, Loki is a game stealer at the end of the day, and yeah. Loki is brilliant tech in this. If you are going to play this list and you're worried about Thanos everywhere and you're like doing really well, add Loki to win. That Subterranean play was brilliant and basically won the game. It was like obvious, it wasn't brilliant, and he top decked Loki, but he already had like 3 rocks in hand. It was just completely crazy. Without that, I think he was dead in the water, and this wouldn't have even been a game. Geo would have taken him out, but he had Loki, and so he was able to steal those cubes, win that game, and end up going to the finals. So this is the list. I think this is honestly very close to the very best version of this list. I think it's a toss-up between whether you want Mobius or Psylocke, because Professor X is absolutely stellar. The Professor X deck in these last 2 decks is why I think that Hela deck was in a lot of trouble, because they don't have enough power early to really stop a Professor X. And if the Professor X locks a lane, then like a blob type nonsense is usually going to be able to, a blob and a Goliath type nonsense is usually going to be able to win the game. All right, the number 1 deck from Comiz. This is another Italian player, and best friend / brother of Dott.Geo. So, you know, they brought the same deck. They finished number 2 and number 3 or 4 or whatever. So number 1 and number 3 or 4 after winning the Johnson Cup. You can argue Comiz is the best player. I don't know Comiz as well, and I have not seen Comiz play as much. I saw several games from Comiz in this tournament, and I saw Comiz play in the Johnson Cup, but that was only a few games. I saw Geo play many, many more games. I'm much more confident, and I talk to Geo all the time, so I'm much more confident in my prediction about Geo. But hey, Comiz won the tournament, and if you want to argue that makes him number one, right now, I'm not going to fight you. My personal opinion is it's Geo, and then Comiz, Lambi, and quite a few others, FAK Crazy, are in like a jumble around number two. This list is awesome. It says I can cheat a million ways. I can stop your cheating with Mobius if you want to do cost reduction, right? But I can cheat out Professor X or Vision. I can cheat out Blob or Thanos or Magneto. I can cheat out Cull Obsidian early. I don't have to worry about Scar nonsense, so I'm not worried about if one of these cards ends up costing 9. A Mockingbird is coming, which means that, like, even though Cull is great, if you get a couple stones and a Mockingbird for 3, you're just as freaking happy, right? And now you don't even have to worry about the opposing Shang while you have Shang. Vision goes all over the place, causing all sorts of trouble. Professor X can just protect that Cull. You can, if you get that Cull out early, it's awesome. It's one of the hardest decks to beat. This is my pick for the best deck in Marvel Snap. Again, the toss-up for me is Mobius or Loki. I don't know what the right answer is. But otherwise, this is basically the perfect 12. Let's go. So this is the same deck as Dott.Geo. Jeff is needed here. You cannot cut Jeff because you have Professor X. Don't play this version without Jeff. Mobius can be Loki, so can Psylocke. We also have Kyra there, or Armor, or even Wave. The rest of the cards are needed. By the way, I like Wave the least here because, well, Wave can help your opponent too, right? Again, don't play this without Hope. Don't play this without Thanos. Don't play this without Blob. Don't play this without Goliath. All these cards are needed at this point. Turn 1 is Draw. Turn 2 is Draw is better than Jeff unless you have Hope. Turn 3 is Timestone. I like the Timestone Psylocke over Hope here, unless my opponent's playing like Loki, or I have Cull already in hand. Timestone Psylocke, if I can get that early Professor X, I feel real good. I know whether I'm running or not. I know if I've won the game or not from that Professor X. That's generally better than Hope, which is generally better than Mobius, pending on the matchup. If your opponent's about to Loki, they're setting up for Loki with like a Quinjet and a whatchamacallit, and a Zabu, drop a Mobius. You won't be sad. Turn 4, Professor X is generally better than Vision, which is generally better than Cull. Turn 5, if you can, play a 6. Play a 6. If not, Professor X is better than Vision. Again, usually, sometimes Vision is better, pending the board. If they played a Storm, for example, get that Vision out there. And turn 6 is Blob or Goliath, usually, or Magneto. Cool. This deck is sick. This is the best deck in Marvel Snap. Take it in, enjoy it. It is expensive as all heck. We've got Series 5 Jeff, Series 5, Season Pass can only be bought for money, Hope. Series 5 Cull, Series 5 Blob, Series 5 Goliath, Series 5 Magneto, and Series 4 Mobius. That's the high majority of this deck that is going to cost you to get. Sorry, but it is the best deck in the game. Taking out Lockjaw might have pushed Thanos back to the pack, but then they immediately released Hope. So we're right back where we started, with Thanos as the absolute best thing to do. Alright, certain tiers of support on Patreon come with on-air thanks. That is the $10 tier. If you'd like to hear your name and get all sorts of exclusive content, please check out our Patreon, patreon.com/snapjudgments. I'd like to thank Abigail Gieslin, Mandatory Burnout, Cables, David G. Wingfield, Direwolf, LAB, Fothor Newman, Good Dog Gamer, Inc., Jay Navarrete, J.D. McDonaldino, Aquila Platano, Caretix Lee, Koire, KCH, Doku, Philip Rakovich, Haplo, Kenny Loggins, Rob Silverman, Robert Riveren, The Bizza, Jay Bussy, Xorce V, Skippy G, Tommy Nyquist, Black Dahlia, The Great Kazoo, Jessica Gamble, Models, Louis Antunes, Matt Conduit, Matt H, Mikey Hijinks, No Flex, Ocularis, Pretty Chill, Seamus, Spike Jones, Two Ties, Tucker, The Homie Min, and of course, Gunny T. Thank you all so much. Shop. This was my shop. I bought nothing, but I did open 2 really cool variants. This is now my favorite Sabretooth. I did not know this existed, but I love Norse Sabretooth, and I got a cool Panda Art Deathlock. Did not make me sad. I almost bought the Steampunk Quake, but I have 2 others that I like, and I don't know. I'll worry about it when it's in. It's gonna clearly be in a freaking there'll be a steampunk album soon, right? But that's Tomorrow Me's problem. All right. This was an incredible tournament. Check out Alpha Stream if you'd like to check it out. and watch some VODs of the games. Check out the Patreon if you'd like to support us financially, and if you're willing to support us for free, hit that sub button and help us grow. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with an absolute massive amount of about Mockingbird, and naturally some patch news. If humanly possible, tomorrow's video, there will be 2 videos tomorrow. If I don't have time, then the morning video, the one that releases at 8 a.m., will release with the patch. Cool? Peace.